Hi, it's Datache, and in my Duck Life video, I opened by talking about how much Flash games impacted my childhood, and the childhoods of a lot of other people. And in a bid to not get into too much detail, I left out the source of a colossal amount of these Flash games. I'm, of course, talking about Newgrounds. While nowadays it's probably known for being the host for that perfect rhythm game with absolutely no flaws whatsoever, Newgrounds has been a sandbox for art, animations, uncensored content, and games for a long time. And while I'm not a veteran of the site to any degree, I definitely have my favourites. And one of them is a classic that plopped onto Newgrounds on May of 2006, courtesy of Jonachrome of One Night at Flumpty's fame. I'm hoping that through this video I'll be able to show you why the story behind these games resonates with me so much. But on top of the games themselves, we're in for quite a ride. What's it called? Well, you'll never really hear another title quite like we're already starting with that trademark Riddle School charm. In Riddle School, you play as elementary schooler Phil Eggtree, who after getting sent to a special class as a punishment, is just about done with his rundown school and stages an escape. You'll find yourself using the mouse to interact with the environment, pick up items, and read a lot of flavor text. And I mean a lot of flavor text. This game at its core is pretty simple gameplay-wise. To get the key to the westmost door of the school building, you have to get through to the headmaster's office. And to do that, you have to get $1 to give Chub, everyone's favourite walking fat joke. There's some other smaller obstacles, but if you're thorough in each room, you won't find yourself really struggling to beat the game in less than half an hour. What kept me invested through this little game though was Phil's dumbass witty dialogue, and the people you'll find in the school. Almost every person or object you encounter in this game has a stupid bit or inside joke attached to it. And whether it's Phil commenting on his plan based on a sharpener being sharp, or his adamant resistance to enter the girls' bathroom, the great handle you get on his personality and his views on his friends makes him really easy to root for. Speaking of friends, you'll be seeing these guys a lot, so it's probably in your best interest to get the gist of their deals. Fred Whistler is Phil's best friend, and a bit of an underachiever slacker who's probably the most bored guy in the room other than Phil at any time. Then there's Zach Kelvin, a boy who's almost always cold at all times, which I'm sure will have no implications on future plot developments whatsoever. And Smiley Sunday, a girl who can only really be described as the physical manifestation of the nerd emoji, and who Phil mocked to get thrown in that special class in the first place. While these guys are mainly just here as gags, you'll get to see some fun stuff done with them later on. But on that note, Riddle School 1 is a pretty simple point-and-click puzzle game, but like all good things, comes to an end. And also, like all good things, it's time to do it again, but with a 2 on the end. Phil Eggtree returns, now in middle school band class, and feeling the boredom creeping back in, decides to stage another escape. After the opening puzzle where we just sort of totally murder Zach, like he's frozen solid, he's dead. This ends up kind of playing out like 1, but with more steps. There are more items, and each idea has just a little bit more complexity to it. Simple stuff like having to check behind the cookie machine to plug it in and making sure every corridor has a purpose just makes the whole product feel a lot more well thought out, even if a little cheap at times. Still no girls' bathroom though. Maybe in the DLC? This all makes sense when you consider the process of Jonachrome at the time. You see, the original Riddle School was a parody of Pico School, which, in its own fucked up way, was a parody of... So remember when I said Newgrounds was a place for uncensored content? Yeah. Anyway, Jonachrome made the OG Riddle School based on that original idea, with Phil being based off one of those madness combat characters and you just shooting your way out. But it changed during development to be the puzzle game we know and love, with him kinda just confessing he was just sort of making it up as he went along in some of the game's fun fact sections. With that info in mind, I see Riddle School 2 as Jonachrome having a vision of what he wanted to make going in. And while that probably isn't the most massive revelation, I think it describes this game to a T.
This was made back when I didn't think that there were going to be more games, but I decided to make another one because people in reviews were saying, hey, you should make another one, and maybe try doing this and this and this to make it better. And I thought, you know what, I like to try to improve myself, I'm going to see about that. I'm going to try to make another one that's better than this one is. And that's how Riddle School 2 got made.
If Riddle School 1 is like a tech demo, this is the earliest instance of an actual Riddle School game. And seeing this development in complexity is going to be a theme we see, well, running through this entire series. Especially as we get to... In this game, Phil Legtree's bored in a high school geography class, and I'm really running out of ways to explain that he's going to make his fucking escape. But anyway, I think the first room kind of makes it clear how much has changed since the development of the last two, with a new mechanic, combining items, rearing its head immediately. This simple decision adds a lot of depth to the pre-existing item system, giving each item value not only its own use, but how it could interact with others. Something you forgot you had sitting around could totally bail you out later in the game. That being said, most of the game has you dotting around the school grabbing coins to get chubba pudding from the cafeteria, and you'll be checking every, and I mean every, nook and cranny. The game takes a shit ton longer, but the fact you can find little hints and stuff in the library, and characters are always sure to tell you what they want from you or where they're going, never makes the game feel like it's pulling a fast one. But moving on from that, Riddle School 3 finds itself at a much higher level than 1 and 2. The music it uses, Blue Sky, is iconic, probably one of the most popular in the series, and there are way more fun animated cutscenes and secrets. It's a full package, emblematic of Jonachrome's abilities with Flash at the time. He clearly wanted to make something fun for everyone who's been patiently waiting, even if we still don't get a look at the girl's bathroom. It took him forever to put together, which is respectable on its own. And while I'd like to say that the series will keep that goodwill, I guess, the next game's a weird case. And to understand why, we'll have to look a bit more at Jonachrome's mindset at the time. If you look into each fun facts section in the first 3 Riddle School games, you can kind of see the growing development time behind each of them, and the surmounting pressure to make these games bigger and more complex. And you get the most honest look at this in some of the more recently made developer commentaries.
People were requesting a 4th Riddle School game, and the only logical place for a 4th Riddle game to take place would be in college. And so I thought about making Riddle University. The thing about that is, I didn't really want to make another game that was just, you know, escaping a normal school building, because I'd already done that 3 times. It seemed really redundant by now to do that. I also was not in college at the time, and wasn't going to be for a while, so it didn't really make sense to me to make a game about being in college, because how was I supposed to know, like, what jokes to make and other stuff like that if, you know, if I've never been.
But there's no real better way of showing it at earnest than just getting right into it. Riddle School 4 stars Phil Egtree, bored in a university maths class, and can you guess what he wants to fucking do? Well, no matter how much he wants to escape in this game, there's only one way out for him. Any object you interact with in this room leads to one outcome. Your teacher, Mr. Munch, presses a button that drops you into lava. And that's that. No secrets or any real game to be had. And that was the point. After this, there wouldn't be really any point to release any more Riddle School games. Or at least, that was the plan.
Whenever I finally actually did release this game, I was going to release it like the moment that I finished this ending. But then people on the forum that I used to go to said that maybe it should be an April Fool's game. And then I thought maybe in that time I could make a bunch more Riddle School games. Like, maybe I could just make so many Riddle School games that people would just get sick of them and they would make no sense. And I tried to do that, but what ended up happening was, because games take a long time to make, I only ended up finishing one, and that was Riddle School 5. And I just kind of made that one longer and made it the ending to the series.
People will stop asking for another Riddle School game once Phil's dead. And thus, not only was the Riddle School 4 plan put into action, but Riddle School 5, a joke game, turned real game, turned what would be a conclusion for the series, at least for a while. And with that strange turn in attitudes that led to this point, how would Jonachrome explain away the events of 4 and wrap up everything in a satisfying fashion? Well, we'll find out as we enter what is essentially the second half of the franchise. Let's get into Riddle School 5 starts up differently to anything we've seen before, with a conversation between 3 color-coded entities, Diz, Viz, and Quiz, but we only need to worry about the first 2 for now. They're watching over the main class who've all been abducted and put into a sleep, with their dreams being monitored. Diz describes the main class we've gotten to see over the last few games, making note of Zack's cold condition and Phil's escapist tendencies, as well as describing them as some sort of threats that have to be dealt with. This leaves us with Phil, who wakes up in a strange bed he doesn't recognize, in a facility in the middle of space with only one course of action, doing what he does best, and making his escape. Other than the immediate departure in terms of setting, this game separates itself a lot from the last 4 in the way you go about solving puzzles. While I'd argue that the first 2 games offered you items in a location and would ask you to, mostly, apply your own basic reasoning to progress, Riddle School 5 is built around this alien environment where you can't really know what to expect. A lot of things operate under new threads of logic that you yourself as the player have to work out and adapt to. For example, there's a machine that transfers life from one being to another that you need to use to bring back a piece of meat into live meat. And this requires you to figure out how a plant works in relation to dirt, and find the correct way to treat the meat before putting it in the machine. And even then it doesn't fully work as expected. And I think this is one of the greatest prides of Riddle School 5, catching you off guard, especially with its length. Just when you think you're done with these fucking tile puzzles, you get access to a room with a keypad and helmet. There was a reason you were able to escape your dreams. It's because you were murdered in Riddle School 4 and woken up by the shock. That's why you returned back to your elementary school body in this ship. The last 3 games were, well, a dream. Up to this point, while you could find your dreaming friends, you couldn't make an attempt to free them without getting fried. But now, the way to save them is clear. If you want to save your friends, you'll have to kill them from within their dreams. And thus starts probably the most memorable section of this entire game, as you're thrust into each of their dreams, all of them being the different games from across the series, and being tasked with finding ways to kill your friends to awaken them in the real world. Remember when I said Phil totally killed Zack back in Riddle School 2? There's no denying it now! I cannot express how full of charm and love this section is. It contains probably some of the funniest parts of the entire series, and is probably one of the reasons this series sticks with me so much. All of this creativity stemmed from a game that was meant to bury a franchise they were tired of. And we'll get to more of that in just a bit, but for now, after freeing our friends and getting them into escape pods, we ourselves hop in and make our escape. Or at least, we do for a few seconds before it goes to shit again. We're drawn back into the ship and meet our captor, Viz, in the flesh, getting the gist that he's got some sort of god complex and wants to wipe out planets he perceives as evil. We actually get some info from Diz that Phil's elementary school was used as the testing ground for figuring out if Earth was evil or not. They placed a time-stopping bomb outside the school, so if anyone left early, they would know about it. And guess what day we decided to break out? Oh yeah, Diz is here now. He's outed as a traitor by Viz and seemingly doesn't agree with his grandiose genocidal rampage of the entire universe, which is fair enough. Diz was also the one to set up the death trap for us in Riddle School 4, in an attempt to free us from our dream. In fact, there's been signs of his influence all over the previous games. See what I mean by how Riddle School 5 took a bunch of unrelated ideas and somehow retroactively turned a series that was meant to die unceremoniously into this straight-up epic? But anyway, Phil's got bigger fish to fry than lore at the moment, as Viz throws Diz out and heads out to his ship while the freeze ray Zack is powering up, ready to freeze the entire Earth any second now. In this last set of puzzles, we've got to get Phil over to the steering wheel of the ship while using even more strange and foreign logic, weird items, and doing even more tile puzzles. Eventually making our way over and giving Viz a taste of his own medicine, bringing Phil's kill count up to 4. And saving the entire planet, I guess. And just like that, Riddle School 5 comes to an end. Diz comes and thanks us for putting an end to Viz's vision. Zack is cured of his chronic freezing, unlocking a new life-altering condition. Yay! And the rest of the gang, with a whole other lifetime's experience fresh in the mind, take the new chance they've been given, with a resolve to make something of themselves when they get back. While Phil only has one thing left on his mind. Stay in school. So that seems like a pretty reasonable endpoint for the series, right? A game that pays its respect to all those that came before while wrapping up a story we didn't even know we had. Well, that was the initial intent. But with renewed interest in the series, Jonachrome would start a new sub-series? I don't really know how to describe Riddle Transfer. Similar to 5, Riddle Transfer exists to surprise its players and deliver something new and unexpected. It's not made to make money or get attention, it's one Jonachrome made because, well, he wanted to. Because it was fun. It would be why he would persist in a very, very lengthy development period. But to see where this time went, we'll just have to hop right into this game. Picking up right where we left off after Riddle School 5, Phil and the gang are being driven home to Earth by Diz. Only, because nothing can go right for these kids, a strange tractor beam-like energy pulls the ship towards the mysterious facility known as Zone 5.1. Revealing the greatest evil to have been hiding in plain sight all along, the US government. Separated from his friends and locked up in a rancid little cell, it's time for Phillectry to do what he does best to earn his freedom. Welcome to Riddle Transfer. First off, best song in the series. Cold Hope goes hard and sells the mysterious ambience of a government facility perfectly. Second of all, this game is probably the most fair. This game is pretty clear about what each character or situation needs. It's just about finding what you need and connecting the dots to progress. Transfer has a pretty simple goal of saving each of your friends from their cells and making your way to the docking area to get Diz's ship out of Zone 5.1. If you're wondering why there's no guards doing any, guarding, by the way, it's because it's the one day off for the entire zone. Truly a government moment. I think the other saving grace of this game is the characters and writing. I mentioned before that these games are very quippy, with Phil's dialogue providing a lot of charm. But in this game, it's turned up to 11, with each floor having different inmates based on urban legends, like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, all with their own problems ranging from trying to escape the facility to something as simple as getting a cool hat. They all give a lot of life to the game, especially since apart from their whole deal of being cryptids, they all have their own little gimmicks or references tied to them, which also function as part of the puzzles you need to progress, whether to get an item or a code to free a friend. Speaking of those, as you reach the tail end of the game, you and your 3 buddies head down to the basement to save Diz. You're faced with a couple puzzles to unlock his shackles. tile puzzles included. Although, Phil's able to use his puzzle-solving skills to get him out. All that's left is to head back to the landing pad and... What? Uh-oh. So, Diz sucks? Just abandoning the group in the compound while security rushes in. The rest of you head down a manhole to escape into the sewers below. And that's where the game ends. And I guess the story of Riddle School at this point in the franchise. You see, even as early as Transfer's bonus features, you can see the number of plans for the future of the franchise. Genrechrome wanted to continue the Riddle School franchise with a whole ass other series, promising a 5-parter across various different schools across the franchise. But as we'd later learn with Riddle Transfer 2's special features 5 years later, this whole thing came with burnout, and he ended up distancing himself from the entire series. It was only when he ended up lashing out against Scott Cawthon, of all people, that he ended up wanting to try right some wrongs, and took a look back at that unresolved cliffhanger. Seeing Dan TDM, also known as the Diamond Minecart, and a couple others replay the games as the series approached its 10th anniversary, renewed his interest in finishing things off, as well as brushing off some ideas he'd initially dismissed during early development of the Transfer series. He didn't need 5 games for the ending he wanted. He just needed 1. He didn't need a half a year to develop this game like he did for Transfer. He just needed 3 weeks. Especially since the 10th anniversary is coming up. He didn't need this game to be the biggest, or hardest, or longest, or anything like that. He just needed it to have a good ending. So as we stare off into this title screen, I want you to ask the question, do you think he did it? As we dive into... With no time wasted at all, we catch up with the gang in mortal peril as the guards of Zone 5.1 are firing on the group of literal children with rifles. Luckily for us though, we managed to run into this conveniently placed sewer teleporter room, with the coordinates conveniently placed at Riddle Elementary, with the conveniently placed slot for the keycard we had at the end of the last game. Okay, well maybe not that convenient, there's still some puzzles in the way for supplying power and correcting the coordinates on the machine, but nonetheless, we managed to haul ass and get the crew to Riddle Elementary. Man, it's like nothing's changed at all. Okay, well maybe not nothing. Remember that blue text in the opening cutscene of Riddle School 5? This is him now. Feel old yet? This is Quiz, the last member of Vision who isn't either
考えるのをやめた
or gone AWOL like Diz. As such, he's gone ahead to take over the entire school and make sure Phil and the gang never see the light of day again. Well, we've done this before, I'm sure we'll be fine. Oh shit! Riddle Transfer 2 plays just about how you'd expect at this point. Point and click puzzle solving gameplay, talk to people, get items, combine them, and solve problems. We're back in Riddle Elementary from the first game, but with a few... enhancements on Quiz's end. Turrets, laser walls, and alien guards are now out there for you to deal with, just to add that little bit of zest to the original game's setting. I will stand by my opinion that Transfer 1 is the better game in the series, but Transfer 2 is a pretty close... third. Yeah, 5's really good as well. But Transfer 2 has a lot of stuff to love too. For one, bringing us back to Riddle Elementary really lets things come full circle for the grand finale. That idea was played with in 5, but it works really well in a different way here. 2, this game is really funny. Like, I know I said that about these games multiple times this video, but some of the dialogue in this game goes so hard. Hell, the visual gags are still on point. At one point in the game, you have to use random coffee grounds, water in a bucket to cook coffee on top of Zack's head, only to then serve it to Miss Kofi and spin her arms 360 degrees like a saw blade to cut something open. Like, some of these ideas, like using Zack's flames, have been used before, but just not ever like this. And the entire game carries these vibes. Hell, we even get a reveal of what the girls' bathroom is like at last. Honestly, it's about as much as I'd expect from a public school. But as we get Cho out of the way of the door one last time and trick an innocent guard into inflicting life-altering blindness on themselves, don't ask. It's time to have a final confrontation with Quiz. Phil almost immediately goes in blazing, criticizing Quiz for doing fuck all in terms of world domination by throwing some turrets on an elementary school. But instead of just getting killed outright, Phil issues a challenge to Quiz to let him take a quiz. Phil will ask some questions, Quiz giving some multiple choice answers to choose from. Why? To prove a point. Quiz had been walked all over forever, the bottom of the hierarchy at Vision, and used Zone 5.1 to get Diz out of the picture, only to not get all the info he needed when Phil broke Diz out, leaving him here, completely lost. Just like that, Quiz breaks down. Deciding that humans are a lot wiser than he gave them credit for, he just lets go and decides to release the school from his control. And thus, the story of Riddle School comes to an end, as everyone is free to move on to the future, living their real lives at last. Just kidding, scrap that happy ending. Diz is back and he's going genocide mode. He gives no shits about judging planets and has been apparently playing the long game. And in a last-ditch effort to stop this, Quiz and Phil enter a small ship in hopes of taking him down. But before he goes, he leaves a few words for Smiley before flying off towards Diz.
Smiley, I used to tease you a lot because I didn't understand you.
But now I realize you're a true role model for me.
And you have a beautiful smile. Oh, they fell in love!
Quiz doesn't have any weapons ready or anything, but I'm sure the small child in the back seat can try to get a gun ready. Time for one last set of puzzles to find a way to beat Diz. One last sliding puzzle. One last code to input. One last tile puzzle! So, our solution is a self-destruct button. Phil's fine, by the way. Quiz, on the other hand. But nonetheless, the day is saved, and finally, with Vision finished, the kids are free to grow up for real this time. As we close out on Phil, finally with a smile on his face. And that brings us to the end of Riddle Transfer 2 and the series. It wraps it up in an endearing way that's touched the hearts of a lot of people who've been around since the beginning. Credits that show the kids finally growing up for real, to a bittersweet remix of Blue Sky, and thanking everyone who's helped along the way, or even brought this story back to the attention of people, as at last, it all fades to black one last time. Attached with one last tiny little detail. Riddle School, since its conception, has had a security camera motif, borrowed from Pico School. And in the last seconds of the game, as we are left in the darkness after the credits, you can hear the sound of a videotape being changed, as if moving on to the next chapter. I like to see this as taking on a couple meanings, but the important two are us as players and Jonachrome himself moving on. I think that at its core, across the 10 years that Riddle School games were released, the series is linked with Jonachrome and his development as an artist and just as a person in general. In his own words, he started the series at 11 and finished Riddle Transfer 2 at 21. It grew up with him, and he managed to come round and find a place where he could leave it satisfied. Being able to watch as a creator grows with one of his own series is a treasure that I can't really express in words, and being able to play through these one after another only makes that feeling stronger for me. Let me just say, straight up, Jonachrome is a bad person. If you want the details, then you can Google this stuff yourself. But regardless, I think the things we can learn from his personal journey are interesting, even when separated from what he'd become. Riddle School is shaky. You can see his interest in it wane and spike throughout the series, and even if he did come back in the end, it didn't have to be quick. In the end, the best entries were formed when he made them at his own pace and was considering how to make the fans happy. Every running joke, line of dialogue, clever puzzle, and surprise return of that franchise, he did so because he loved making Riddle School. It's this sort of thing that motivates me and many others to put stuff out there, to make things we care about and develop them as we see fit, to bring something into reality because we care and are passionate about it, not because of the artificial need to do so. And that's what Riddle School means to me. It's a pure expression of passion, all the way from childhood to adulthood. A lesson in what it means to love making things. And for that, I'll love it forever. If you've made it to this point, thanks for watching the retrospective. I hope I don't do one of these big reviewy videos again for a while. I was originally planning on doing the second half of the Duck Life franchise, but Duck Life 9 got announced, which was unexpected to say the least. If I get a way to record all the games, you can expect it to pop up on here at some point. But for now, we're headed back to art videos. If you want to see some of the other stuff I've made, the playlist of all my modern stuff should be linked in the description. I've got nothing else to say, so until next time, I'll see you in the next one.